Everyone's obsessed with pocket notebooks. In a world of AI and automation, why are people turning back to something so analog? I didn't get it. So over the past year, I filled them, tested them, and carried them everywhere I went. And now I get it. In this video, I'll break down why pocket notebooks are making a comeback, how to use them, which ones are worth buying, and whether they're really as life-changing as people claim. The average American checks their phone 80 times a day. That's about once every 12 minutes. And it's not just a quick glance. Before you know it, we get sucked into an endless vortex of notifications and become trapped by the infinite scroll. In my case, an over-reliance on my phone was stopping me from experiencing life spontaneously. It was consuming too much of my free time, and it was getting in the way of making progress on things I care about. And this is exactly why people claim pocket notebooks are so powerful, because used wisely, they can be an algorithm-free substitute for the smartphone, an antidote to a lot of these challenges. But the real question is, well, how? What do you actually keep in them? What structure is useful? And what do you do with the stuff you capture? So let's talk about that. I've been carrying a pocket notebook for about a year now, and I've experimented with several different ways of using them. And I want to talk about 3 that I found incredibly helpful, including one that has completely transformed my relationship with my phone. Let's start with the Wastebook. So the Wastebook has no structure and no rules, it's just a place to capture raw and unfiltered thoughts before working out what to do with them later. And they've been used by lots of prominent people throughout history, probably most famously Ben Franklin and Isaac Newton. They used it as a place to capture their ideas and inspirations before transferring them to a more structured system. For me, this is an incredibly practical tool. If I'm out and about and something pops into my head, maybe it's an idea, a little bit of inspiration, perhaps I overhear something that reminds me to do something else, or maybe it's just, an action that I have to take, or a reminder, whatever it is. Instead of reaching for my smartphone, I will reach for my Wastebook and I will jot it down in here. But where it really shines for me is when I've got nothing to do, when I'm perhaps captive somewhere, waiting for a haircut, or traveling on a train or public transport, something like that. I'll reach for the Wastebook and I'll just jot down what I'm thinking about. Maybe I'll ponder a subject, perhaps I'll start to write a script for one of these videos. One of the mistakes that I made when I first started to keep one of these is to put too much structure into it and to just worry about how neatly I was writing. And I found very quickly that that was just getting in the way of me using it. I was worrying too much about where in the book I needed to add the information. And at one point I was even correcting spelling mistakes with whiteout. And as soon as I stopped worrying about all of that, I started to use it a lot more. Because the important thing to remember is this is literally just a catch-all. You're going to harvest the good stuff at a later date. So what it looks like, you really don't need to worry about. In my case, usually at the end of the day, or at least every couple of days, I'll flick through and I'll try and make sense of the information. Maybe I've started to write a script and I'll transfer that to a Google Doc. Maybe there's an idea for a thumbnail for a video in there, and I'll take that into Photoshop and start to work it up. Or if I've captured a quote, then I'll put that somewhere a bit more permanent. We'll talk about that in just a moment. One practical point with this book is that it's helpful to write in a ballpoint pen, because I am opening and closing this the whole time. I'm usually writing on it when I'm in a rush, when I'm standing up, maybe I'm on public transport. I generally write with a fountain pen, but what I was finding was that although I don't care about the neatness of my writing, I didn't much enjoy getting ink all over the pages and all over my fingers when I was writing in a rush. So, Wastebook, use a ballpoint pen. So next up is a logbook. Now, this one was inspired by Austin Kleon, who has used a very simple version of a logbook for a long, long time to capture the bare bones of everyday experience. Logbooks have been around for centuries. I think they originated with sailors that would use them to capture the distances they'd traveled, the places they'd seen, and anything notable that happened on their voyages. And that's what they're being used for us as individuals too. They're just a place for us to capture how far our ship has traveled, what's going on in our life. If you're the kind of person that has been interested in capturing their daily experiences but hasn't been willing to invest the time in keeping a diary, then a logbook might be a good solution for you. And I'll show you an example from a few weeks ago. My friends Pete and Lizzie came to stay, and all kinds of fun things happened on this day. But the things that are making me laugh looking back at this now are almost certainly the moments that I would have forgotten. I really enjoy this style of pocket notebook because I've got a terrible memory for experiences. So for me, this is absolute gold. Now, 100%, it's not necessary to chronicle your life in this way, but if this appeals to you, then I suggest just give it a go for a couple of months and see if you get the same benefit from it that I do. So this is the big one, the Zibaldone. The Zibaldone is a style of notebook that originated in Florence in the 1400s, around about the time that paper was becoming widely available. People would capture things they thought were meaningful, so it could be passages from books or quotes, aphorisms, things of that nature. Whenever I come across something fascinating or enriching, I copy it out in my Zibaldone and I write slowly. And if I remember my date stamp, then I will even stamp the date next to it too. A lot of people would keep this kind of information in some form of digital system, probably in Notion or some other second brain style software. But for me, that would defeat the point, because I've already got enough reasons to go on my phone or to be looking at a screen. And if I was to add this stuff to Notion, for example, I know that before you know it, I'd be looking at other notifications and I'd be off down some rabbit hole, consuming information that I never really wanted to in the first place. When I'm writing in this, I even use slow drying. That was close. When I'm writing in this, I even use slow drying ink. Sometimes I write with this Pentel brush pen. I'm not sure if you can see that. No. And that's because I want it to take time. I want what I'm writing to sink in. The crazy thing about typing on your phone, because of predictive text, is that you can type faster than you can even think, which goes some way to explain why lots of the things we capture in digital systems don't actually land in our long-term memory. So writing slowly is, for me anyway, a way to try and counteract that. I am so attached to this thing that I've even changed the way that I dress so that I can carry it around with me all the time. It never runs out of battery, doesn't have a secret agenda, and it forces me to pay attention to my surroundings in a way that previously I wasn't. If you're thinking about picking up a pocket notebook, I've got a few solid recommendations for you. If you're looking for a waste book, a really solid recommendation is Field Notes. I love these because they're super rugged. You can pull them in and out your pocket all day long and they'll be totally fine. The pages on this one are pretty much waterproof, so if you're out camping and there's some drizzle, you can still write in the rain under those conditions and it's not going to fall to pieces. Just a word of warning, the pages, at least on this one, don't play very well with roller ball pens and certainly not with fountain pens. So you want to use a mechanical pencil or a ballpoint pen, which is what I use, and you'll be absolutely fine. But if you like the idea of tearing pages out of your waste book before transferring the information to somewhere a bit more permanent, then this is a really good option too. So this is called the Rodea Pocket. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But what's cool about this is it's got perforated pages, which means that you can tear it out really easily. So if you're the kind of person that wants to rip out what you've written before transferring the information to somewhere a bit more permanent, then this would be a really good option. It's got a really cool aesthetic. It's almost like a reporter's pocketbook or something like that. This is also another really good option. For something a little bit more structured, like a logbook or a Zibaldone, I would go for the Penco V7. The paper on this is so good. It's really, really nice to write in, regardless of what pens you're writing on. Like I mentioned earlier on, I use this Pentel brush pen, and it doesn't even bleed through the pages, which is kind of difficult to understand, really. Again, I love the aesthetic of this. It sort of reminds me of a workbook that somebody might have kept in a factory in the 1950s or something like that. The only thing I wish this did have was an elastic band, but I just added one of those myself. I just cut some holes in the back with an X-Acto knife, glued a bit of elastic, and then it was fine. All you got to do when you do that is make sure that there's enough slack. That looks like it's going to be too loose, but that's actually just about right by the time you've wrapped it around the other side. Regardless of which type of pocket notebook you decide to start experimenting with, the beauty of this kind of practice, this deeply outdated analog practice, is that it forces you to slow down a little bit in a way that digital technology, doesn't really make possible. And there's merit in that alone. Keeping a pocket notebook has helped me to be more present, to break my addiction to my phone, and to make progress on creative projects that had been stuck for years. But the real benefits from using this tool only come when you stick to it. So how do you do that? How do you stay consistent? Well, in the video above, I share 4 tactics for staying consistent with any new habit. And I promise if you apply them to this one, then it might just change your life.